9 to 5 is a Mexican standoff in video game form.
How about that? It's a Mexican standoff. Only we ain't got no Mexicans.
Well, my team usually comes out on top, but that's beside the point. The game launched as a free-to-play title for the PC back in late August. The sustainability for 9 to 5 development and the financial success was staked exclusively on microtransactions. Games that launch or have incorporated microtransactions are the norm these days, whether it's in the form of battle passes, in-game cosmetics, or in some cases in free-to-play MMOs, such as Lord of the Rings Online, game content unlocks, or removal of currency restrictions. When 9 to 5 launched with microtransactions, there wasn't too much of an issue, seeing it as launched as a free-to-play title. However, the way they were incorporated was the first misstep in the fall of 9 to 5. Although a majority of this video is analytical and critical, there will be a few things in here that will actively praise and portray the game in a positive light. So I would like to state that even though I'm a content creator for the game, this video is in no way endorsed, commissioned, or sponsored in any way or form by Redhill. Everything in this video is 100% my own opinion. The game launched with almost 900 concurrent players, which while not a massive number in the grand scheme of things, was still an achievement for a free-to-play game that was, and still is, under the radar for most gamers out there. Unfortunately, the game was heavily reviewed negatively, mainly due to the performance issues and the pay-to-win microtransactions. See, this is where the development team / publisher at Redhill Gaming had the initial wrong line of thinking. It is basic business practices to make back the cost of development and all additional expenses such as marketing. But when a game launched with insanely high prices for gear that would give you a clear advantage over everyone else, people were immediately turned off. The game's development is based in Europe, so they use euros as the in-game currency. The conversion rate alone kills any potential budget customers to drop their hard-earned money on the game. I have over 150 hours clocked on the game, and I haven't dropped a single cent of money on it. The prices were, and still are, just too high. Redhill heard the feedback of the player base and lowered the amount of money needed to buy these guns and armor kits. But it was too late. The jury was in and the verdict was guilty. I wouldn't really call it greed on Redhill's behalf. It seems more like they picked the worst idea when they were brainstorming on how to make their costs back quickly. They unfortunately launched with a short-term plan and weren't thinking long-term. Players aren't going to drop the amount of a AAA game cost on release for a couple of guns in this freshly released free-to-play game coming from a game developer that isn't well known. To keep things fresh for the player base and to give incentives to play over the weekend, Redhill ran matchmaking events. These events range from limited time game modes, sneak peeks at the new maps in the pipeline, pun intended, and unique tasks. The most successful event that Redhill ran was the Days of the Dead, during which the newest map was being tested in the live build. The event's task allowed players to unlock exclusive gear and cosmetics that looked pretty damn cool. The dwindling player count spiked during this event and queue times were almost non-existent. However, there was a downside to the matchmaking events outside of the Days of the Dead. Unlike Days of the Dead, the normal weekend events were split into two different matchmaking queues. This would effectively split matchmaking queues into two, and with 3 servers available to queue on, this would make a total of 6 different queues. The player count was not high enough to sustain 6 different queues, and this would lead to confusion and frustration for players who just wanted to play a match, but they had no idea what other players were queuing. Redhill took notice of this and eventually removed matchmaking events until the player count started to rise, in which it didn't. 9 to 5 originally had 3 regional servers on release: US West, US East, and EU. Unlike the betas and demo weekend, there was no Asia server. This was a kick in the teeth for the APAC player base, but Redhill had cultivated trust between them and players during initial development, so they received the benefit of the doubt from some of the APAC players. It was and still is a massive frustration and grind to play from APAC, as we have 250 plus ping to the US servers. Actually, let me correct myself there, US server, singular. Redhill saw the dwindling player count and heard the feedback from players who were complaining about the long queue times, and the best idea they had was to remove the US West server entirely. If launching without an Asia server was a kick in the teeth, the removal of the next closest server for the APAC player base was a metaphorical cemented dildo in the rear. There were so many better ideas that Redhill could have applied to fix the issue of long queue times that could have avoided killing the APAC player base. They could have removed US East instead, which would have had the same result they were intending in keeping APAC players happy. They could have removed both US East and West and opened a central US server, instead, which would have had the Americans meet in the middle and only upping the APAC players' ping minimally, or even close one US server and open an Asia server. Why am I dying on this Asia server hillside? Surely it's because I'm in Australia and I'm biased more than Hawk gets roasted. Fuck yeah, I'm biased. But what Redhill needs to understand is the biggest market for free-to-play games outside of Europe is Asia. The biggest and most popular game in the world is Garena Free Fire, which is a mobile game out of Singapore. Credit to the game theorists for their video that I used for research of this video. Their video is linked in the description below. In a research study by Nico Partners, which is a market intelligence company, they found that in 2019, free-to-play games account for 80% of all digital games revenue in Asia. You can read the full article on Game Daily, which I've also linked below. Drawing upon my own experience in the esports and gaming scene, in which I had a strong connection to the APAC player base in a lot of big games, including free-to-play titles, I can confidently say the Asian market is something Redhill needs to tap and invest into if they want their game to survive. As we conclude this deep dive into 9 to 5, I can only hope Redhill takes the much needed step to pull the game out of the deep end and start investing into the players that want to invest into them and their creation. I fully recommend 9 to 5. I just can't get enough of it, even though I need to wait until the weekend, so there's an actual player base, which is ironic for a game called 9 to 5 and calls their matches shifts. To my APAC viewers, please show your support for a regional server. Otherwise, there may come a day in the very near future that we will no longer be able to enjoy or play 9 to 5.